Welcome to episode 106. We are just getting connected with Surrey, and then we will start as soon as we can get connected with her. Of course, we have questions planned, but it's the most fun when you ask questions live in the chat. So feel free to type in your questions whenever you have them, and we will make sure to scroll through and get all the questions during the interview. So as soon as we see her, we will get connected. Thank you all for joining on a Sunday morning, especially those of you on the West Coast. Okay, there's Surrey. Adding you, Surrey, if you can accept the request.
There
we are. Hello.
Hello. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, it's totally fine. We are in great shape now. So thank you so much, Surrey, for joining us for interview 106 with Ask Tamily. We're so excited to talk to you.
Oh, Suzanne, I so admire what you've done to bring the Tamily together, and I am so honored to be on this interview.
Surrey, you're such an incredible member of the Tamily. Honestly, when I think about the definition of Tamily, you're it. Honestly, we love you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, let's get started with some questions for you. And of course, if anyone asks any in the chat, we'll ask those too. But we always like to start with our favorite question, which is when and how did you start with the Tracy Anderson method?
So it was out in the Hamptons in Watermill, East Hampton, and a friend of mine and we would go to all these exercises classes. We were doing a lot of of the Soul Cycle and Flywheel, and Meredith, who runs the Hampton studios, said to my friend, "Why don't you come try Tracy Anderson?" So she asked me if I would come. We went to the studio in East Hampton. It was so hot. I literally snuck the window open, and I was like, "I'm never going back here." And so this Meredith said to my friend Karen, "What about trying the Watermill studio?" And literally we walked in there. It was so light. It was so beautiful. And after that, I was completely sold. And I kept taking classes. And one day I'm walking over to a woman, and as I'm looking at the leg weights, and I start talking to her, I'm like, "So what's the difference between these two kinds of leg weights?" And I'm asking her like a million questions. And then I go back to the mat, and my girlfriend says to me, "That was Tracy." I was like, "That's Tracy?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, I mean, I feel so stupid. I was like talking to her for like 20 minutes about the weights and asking her a million questions. I thought she was like a trainer or something. I had no idea who she was. And I literally I remember leaving the studio the next time I was there. And my husband said, well, he would drive me and pick me up. And he's like, "So how do you like it there?" And I'm like, "Look, everybody looks so good." And my husband's like trying to be supportive. And he's like, "You look great too." And I'm like, "Not really, And he said to me, "There's just this one woman. She was wearing gray sweatpants and she had her hair up in a ponytail. She might have looked a little better than you." And I'm like, "That was Tracy." So it was, and then I was just taking a lot of the classes with Tracy. And then she said to me one day, "So like, what are you going to do when the summer's over?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Why don't you go to classes at 59th Street?" And I said, "Well, I work out like 5:30 in the morning." And she's like, "I'm going to send a trainer to your house." And I was like, "What?" And that's like really how I got started.
So how long ago was that?
It was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So have you also done like the streaming classes online as well?
So I remember the first time I was going on vacation, and I was talking to Tracy, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going on vacation to Italy." And she's like, "Well, what are you going to do for your workout?" I'm like, I don't know. And she was like, well, why don't you try the streaming? I'm going to give you as a gift for your trip, the streaming. And I tried it, and it was so hard because when you're used to the studio and the heat and humidity and everything is there and the energy, it was just so hard. And it's then I realized like how much I admire all of you, Tamily, that are doing this all over the world without the support of the studio. And when COVID started, and so I was streaming on and off, like when I would travel. And when COVID started, I was really just walking. I just couldn't like push myself. I think it was all the stress and everything that was going on. And so many people reached out to me, Rebecca Wertzman, and so many people like, I'm worried about you. And then Courtney, who I've been working out with for 3 years now, she called me up and she's like, I'm really concerned. Like it's 3 weeks and you're not like exercising. And then Tracy texted me, Courtney's really worried about you. I'm like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to do it. And I just started the streaming and I've really come to absolutely like love it. And I was doing the live classes on Saturday and Sunday with like my COVID group, Claudia and Julia and Claire from London and Julie. And it was like just connecting with all of the Tamily who were just back and forth all over the world. It gave me so much strength and so much energy. And then as you might have seen, the studio opened outdoors. And so I've been going to the studio and I've been doing an hour and a half. I do the class and then I do the dancing because I haven't been able to dance because of the, floor. Yeah. And so it's been great. But, the Tamily has just kept me going in so many ways. As I travel, I try to meet as many people as I can. When people come to 59th Street Studio, I always tell them to look me up and I try to meet them. And I've had the chance to meet people like you who are so inspiring at the Vitalities. So it's been really an amazing, amazing community. And I feel so blessed to be like a part of it.
It's been so wonderful too that we could still connect during this COVID time. Like that probably was the weirdest though for people that worked out in studios all the time to then change the workout, and also how do you connect with people that you used to be in person. But luckily we've got these Zooms and the live classes and everything.
Oh, and like people like Michelle, who's amazing, bringing people together. And I got to actually meet Hannah from Israel, which was so exciting on the Zoom, and just some amazing, amazing people. So it's kept me going during this very, very difficult time.
I can't really imagine what this would have been like without the Tamily. Definitely.
I agree.
A totally different experience.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Suri, especially since, you were active and exercising before you started the method, what kind of results did you actually see once you were doing the method?
Oh, I mean, I have to say, like, first of all, my entire body changed, like my whole body changed. Not to mention, just the physical changes, but, Suzanne, I grew up in a very, very religious community. And, I had like a lot of sort of discomfort physically in my body, and movement was always very, very hard for me and uncomfortable. And I think it's just given me such a sense of confidence. But, I think what's attracted me so much to this method is the mental challenge that you take on every single day. And, it's really given me a sense of that I can break through barriers that have held me back. One thing for me is that change is very, very hard. And I get used to something and then it's really hard to make the change. And the discomfort that I feel every 7 days when I finally get the program down, and the new week comes, the anxiety that I feel and wanting to like make sure that the first time I go into class, like I know I've watched the breakdown and I know what it is. And, you know, trying to break through that fear of change is something that every week I think about and think about this sort of deeper emotional meaning of that.
Absolutely. That's what's so incredible about the method. Well, we're starting to get some questions in the chat already. So let me ask you from Nicole. She said, have you noticed that you're able to track the trainer during an in-person class more easily after streaming for a few weeks?
That's a very interesting question. You know, I think that, you know, the tracking of the arms is always the hardest thing for me because you just get used to a sequence and then it changes so fast.
Yeah.
Whereas like on the leg series, you have so many, there are so many of them, you know, that you can, so the arms have always been very hard for me, particularly when Tracy does it, like in the live classes that she's been doing Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes, and when the dance happens along with the arms, I'm sometimes, you know, but a lot of it I feel for me is mental, where I'm in my head and I'm saying like, oh, I'm not good at this. I've never been good at this. I'm not a dancer, you know, and I'm fighting that all the time. Like, Tracy talks a lot, and this has been something that has really spoken to me about getting to a place of performing it. I sometimes am so stuck on getting each piece of it right that I'm like, there's not that flow, that smooth flow. So when I get to like day 7 and it's like, I'm finally there, or I finally can like let go of that sort of tension, or let go of that kind of like discomfort and just experience it, you know, then it's the next week.
Right. As soon as you get used to it, it starts over again.
Exactly.
Who in the Tamily inspires you?
Oh, so many people. The first two people that I really met in the Tamily was Natalia and Rebecca. She reached out to me and said she was coming to New York with a group, and Rebecca Wertzman was part of that group, and they've come to the Hamptons to visit, and you know, I've seen them a number of times in the studio, and you know, that's been really incredible. I just want to share a beautiful story with Andrena from Switzerland. I met her at a Vitality in the Hamptons. We sort of bonded over autoimmune issues. She asked Tracy about autoimmune. I went to speak to her afterwards. I said, I have an autoimmune. We got really sort of had this really sort of deep connection. And then I kind of lost track of her. And I always thought about her and wondered how she was doing. And then when I went to the studio in Spain, I must have posted a picture, and she direct messaged me, and she's like, I want to introduce you to people in Spain. I have a lot of connections there. We talked, and I said, she asked me how I was doing. I said, I forgot my medication. I'm not doing that well. She immediately went into like high gear. She asked me about the medication. She looked up the generic name. She called the head of the pharmacy. I was nervous because I didn't have the prescription. She had it delivered to my hotel room. The next day, I was at this studio in Spain. People came over to me. Andrena told us all about you. We wanted to meet you. I tell them the story. I'm like, what a woman this woman is. And they're like, do you realize she did that all from a hospital bed? I was like, what? She never said that to me. She's like, yeah, she's in the hospital. She had surgery. I mean, my husband said to me for the first time, wow, now I understand what this community is, of sisterhood, of friendship, of caring, of taking care of each other. You know, it was so special. And, you know, then she came to the Hamptons and we did a Vitality together. And we were actually supposed to go to Spain together when that got canceled, unfortunately. But Lara in Padua and Gaia from Dubai, I had the chance to meet them, and I had the chance to visit Lara in Padua and spend New Year's Eve with her. So Claire in London, I mean, so many people. of course, my partner totally in the studio is Erin Klatskin, who I adore. And I've been working out with my daughter. So she's 13, and she started doing Tracy, and on and off she was coming to the studio, but now she's doing it religiously every morning, 7 days a week. I'm so proud of her. And
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. We have another question in the chat. This is from Rebecca Wartzman. She said, what have you learned from your past that has helped you be the awesome person that you are today?
Well, I grew up with like an incredibly strong father who was an incredible role model and such a strong person. And, you know, he passed away 3 years ago. And I think of him all the time because I think about the strength that he had and the kindness that he had and sense of community that he had. And I realized that while I live a very different life than he lived, you know, so much of what he taught me is part of this method and part of this community. And I just take that with me all the time.
That is very, very impactful, definitely. It's wonderful when you can pull those kind of life lessons through something like a workout method, and it just reinforces, you know, the community and the excellent things about this workout. What would be your advice to someone that might be new to trying the method?
So I have had the opportunity to have so many friends join me in the studio. Tracy did a class for my birthday, and all my friends came, and out here in the Hamptons, and so many friends have come and tried Tracy with me, or have started to do this streaming, especially now during COVID. And you know, it's incredibly hard. And what I tell them is, you know, what's special about this community is that we all understand that to achieve whatever success you achieve in any area of your life, it's not about like reading a book or taking a pill or, you know, signing on to like, you know, somebody else's like method. It's really about searching deep inside yourself and like figuring out what are those blocks and how do you get through them. And so, you know, I say to people, when it's hard, you got to like push through it and figure out why is it hard. Tracy always talks about balancing out the imbalances. And so I think that it's like very deep work, and the people who are attracted to it, people like you, understand like what it takes to be successful, and it permeates every area of your life. And that's why like the people who are part of it are so special, because they understand it's not about being on a cabbage diet or, you know, being on, you know, taking some kind of pill that's going to transform you, or a cream that's going to make you look great, or going through surgery. Or it's really about doing the work that it takes to get where you want to go in life. And the people who are attracted to it are just incredible people that are trying to get better every day, and better, to be a better parent, to be a better friend, to be a better self, to be more actualized. And that's just like, that method just lends itself to that. So it's like, my advice is just like, try to push through it and try to figure out what it is that you're bumping up against, and just don't give up.
Absolutely. That's the most important part. And I mean, it sounds simple, but it's really just about that. Just do it, don't give up, and connect with everybody. So we have another question for you in the chat. This is from Christine, and she said she first met you at a Vitality in 2017. You were so down to earth and welcoming. In addition to streaming, how has your relationship with the method changed or evolved over the last 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's changed a lot, in that I really feel like I was having a lot of challenge. I do a lot of the privates, the virtual privates, the individual privates. I've been working with Courtney for 3 years now. I've been working with Crystal privately. And I feel like really it's been a tremendous amount of work. I remember the first time I did a private, one of the trainers who's no longer with Tracy said to me, like, yeah, you just like don't get it, you know, like, and I felt so bad. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? Like, will I never get this? And I just feel like there were so many parts of it that were so hard for me. And it's still really hard for me to like open my hips and really extend and open up, you know, this part of me, you know. And I feel like, you know, I feel so much more at ease. I feel like I really understand like what this is about, and I can't always get there. But I kind of, I connect with it deeper and deeper the longer I do it.
And that's really what it's like for everyone. I think that's important for new people to know that like everybody is still working and it's still hard. There isn't anyone that's like, oh, it's always easy, or it wouldn't work for them. Like,
Exactly.
you know, we're all like trying to get better all the time, and especially how the method changes. Like you said, every 7 days it's a new brain.
Exactly. And I think in every series, there is one thing that is hard for you. And it might be different than for somebody else. And it's like figuring out, why is this so hard for me? Like, what do I need to do to open that up, and figuring that out? But it's a different thing. But as you said, Suzanne, nobody has it easy. It's somehow you have this fantasy, like, it's just me. Everybody else is like flying through this.
Right. But
this woman actually at the class from South Africa said to me today, she said, you know, don't you find this week a little easy? And I said, yeah, until I focused on the details, and then it got really hard. And then I was showing her a few things, and then after class she said, wow, it was so much harder this time when I focused on the details. So I always say, like, if it's too easy, you're doing something wrong. You know, you're not actually doing it right.
Exactly. That's totally true. Your leg is not high enough. You were like something you're not, if it feels easy, you're not doing it.
Exactly.
So Hannah would like to know when you are coming to visit her in Israel.
As soon as COVID is over, I'm there. I'm visiting everybody, really. Yeah. And I actually love that, like, when Lara went to Israel, she connected with Hannah, and, you know, I just love seeing people connect with each other. You know, when they go places, it's just really, it's really wonderful and really special.
Yeah, that aspect of the Tamily, I mean, that's something, you know, obviously we've connected virtually during COVID, but it's just so amazing to know wherever you travel, there's someone from the Tamily.
Oh, yeah. I went to Japan and connected with 2 women. It was amazing. We had like tea together and we talked, and it was just so amazing.
Yeah, that will be nice when we can do that kind of stuff again. We have another question in the chat from Tam Menopausal. She wants to know, do you find it easier or harder to be consistent with a timetabled studio class, or the flexibility of being able to do a streaming class whenever you're ready?
So I really came to, because I'm bad at change, I really came to love the streaming and love that flexibility. But the second I had the chance to go back to the studio, I was like, I was going to be there. And then once right before I was going, I was so anxious about it. I was like, I don't know. I really love the streaming. I'm not sure this is going to work for me. There's a million reasons why it's not good. But they give you these headphones. And the second the music started on that headphone, I knew I made the right decision to get back to the studio. But, you know, there are advantages to each one. I think the advantage for me at the studio is that one of the things I'm working on that Courtney has been talking to me about is that a lot of times in between sets, I stop and I have a drink, or I'm like trying to center myself or focus. And in the studio, I'm really working on not stopping and drinking like in between sets. Just wait till the next side, or wait till the heavy weights,
Mhm.
And I feel like it's much easier. Like I'm forced to do that in a class, whereas I'm home, I'm like, I'm stopping. My son is talking to me. I'm getting a drink. I have to go to the bathroom, you know.
Right.
And it's like, you just can't do that in a class because you're ruining the energy of the classroom for everybody.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think that there are advantages to each
Mhm.
one of them. And I've kind of loved them both.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that too. I feel like, especially being in a studio with like the heat and the music and the energy, like there's nothing like that. But at home, you're not going to kick someone or, like
Exactly.
there's definitely positives to both. So
Absolutely.
another question for you in the chat. Everyone is really loving this interview, sorry. Um, this is from Sophia. She said, how do you emotionally work through a move that you feel you can't do? Do you have any tips for that?
Wow. Well, usually Courtney's the one who helps me through that. And usually she breaks it down for me in a way that is super helpful, because I think a lot of times I'm kind of doing it wrong. And that's, sometimes I'm even making it harder for myself.
Mm.
Um, and, so that's been sort of super helpful. I think the other thing that opens me up a lot is the dancing. I've kind of been very resistant to it, and I was doing it with Crystal in the Hamptons on the weekends, but I stopped because of COVID. I couldn't do the dancing here in my house, and being back to the dancing it's just opened me up a lot, and that's kind of been helpful, believe it or not, in actually doing the mat work.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I think it doesn't initially seem like they're connected, but the moves, the endurance, it really does help across the board.
The other thing I just want to mention that has been super helpful is the mirrors. I don't really have the mirrors right here. I have 3 small mirrors, but I don't have them right here since I set this up. And I noticed that a lot of the people in the Tamily have like amazing tam caves. And the mirrors make such a difference now that I'm back at the studio and I can actually see, because Courtney always talks to me about opening my hip at the extensions, and I can't feel it, but when I can see it, I see that I'm doing it wrong. And I noticed that a lot of people tape themselves
Mhm.
and post it. And when I tape myself and I watch myself, and a lot of times Courtney will tape me and then send me the tapes. And when I watch it, I say, I get it. I'm not doing it right, but
Yeah.
I can't feel it. I hope I get to a place where one day I'll
Mhm.
actually be able to feel that I'm not doing it right, but I'm not there yet. So I think that actually seeing it makes a big difference. And even like having somebody video you or videoing yourself and then looking back at it and then looking at what Tracy's doing. And then you see, you know what?
Mhm.
I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, there's times like I'll think my leg is so high, and then I look at like a video and I'm like, well, that wasn't anywhere near where it should have
It's amazing. But
been.
it's important to do it, Suzanne, without the criticism. I find like I get so down on myself. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm
Yeah.
like, it doesn't look at all like what the trainer is doing. But I feel like if I can just say, like, forget the judgment, just like keep trying and keep
Mhm.
figuring out why I'm not getting there.
Mhm. Right. Well, I was going to ask you if you faced any challenges in doing the method, but I think you've kind of spoke to that. Would you have any other advice as people are facing challenging moments in the method?
I think that I think it's important to sort of focus on the details. And I think the first time you do a week, um, it's hard to focus on all the details. But what I said to this woman who was next to me this morning, I said, I find like every single time I do it, I focus on something else, or I try to watch for something else that I wasn't doing right. I don't know if you know, but like, if you know what I mean, but like last week when we were going up, you actually put your arm up. The first day, I didn't get that.
Mhm.
The second day, I was like, you got to put your arm when you're putting your leg up. So it's those little things.
Right.
Or this week when you like are actually moving one of your arms further out when you're putting your foot up. So
Right.
it's like if every single time you do it, you're getting another detail, then you're improving. And that's sort of helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's like the fourth or fifth day, and I realize, like, oh, your
Exactly.
leg was doing that. Like, let me
Exactly.
now.
But it's so detail oriented that sometimes it takes 3 or 4 or 5 times till you get it.
Yeah, and you have to be okay with that. Like, I think that's part of the evolution too. Like you said, you have to do it without being critical, like without judging yourself. Like Tracy says, don't judge her, don't judge anybody else, and just be able to know you can keep improving.
Suzanne, it's funny when Tracy has said that, what goes on in my head is I totally judge myself. I totally judge myself. So it's like really important to keep remembering, like, it's okay. And it's like, doesn't have to be perfect. And yes, you can screw up on the tracking. It's okay. Um, Mary Alice is, she's a pilot. And so her tracking is amazing. And when I've watched her tracking is like insane. And so I always feel like, I'm the worst tracker. Like, and she said to me one day at a Vitality, you could be a pilot. You're good at tracking. I was like, me? Are you kidding me? Wow, thank you. Because I think I'm so bad at tracking. So it's like, it's all in your head,
Yeah, that's totally true. It's all mental. What is something that you've learned from Tracy?
Oh, I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount from her. And I think that, wow, that's a really good question. I think it's just to be in my body and to try to get out of my head, which is such a hard thing for me because I literally grew up like here. And, being here is really hard for me. And I think she has really taught me that it's okay to like live in all of me. And that's been a really hard challenge coming from where I come from.
But that's so, that's so important and it's so relatable. Like, I think we all feel like those kind of struggles are like just with us. But I mean, it's almost everyone that Tracy works with that, you have to accept your whole self. So we have a fun question in the chat from Sigrid on the We Are Tam Nation account. She said, what is your favorite champagne?
Oh my God. Vintage Rosé Dom Perignon is my favorite. It's like my favorite champagne in the whole world.
It sounds lovely. Okay, we have another question from Isabel. Have you ever had any minor injuries from the Tracy Anderson method? She said she's 47 and has had a few minor issues.
So like in the beginning, I think I was like, I was all in my shoulders, and till this day, my neck really still hurts. And I'm not sure if it's from like watching the trainer, and Tracy has said to me, like, switch sides, because I always tend to be on the like left side facing the trainer. And she's like, switch sides, like don't always be in the same place. But I think that oftentimes the injuries are because I'm not doing it right. So like there are some weeks where I feel like there's so much on my like pressure on my wrist, and I realize like it's because I'm not moving from like my core. So I am trying really hard. Like when I sort of feel something, when I feel my knees hurting, when I feel my wrist hurts, I'm trying to say it shouldn't feel like that. I've got to like adjust. Or if I feel it in my back, it's because I'm not holding my core. So I try immediately when I feel some pain to either adjust or figure out like how to move in a way that isn't putting that kind of pressure. So I feel like it's an indication that you've got to think about doing it differently.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because I think we don't always think about it that way, but if your wrist is hurting, if your shoulder's hurting, you might be, kind of putting too much weight or not having like the right hand placement, that kind of stuff.
And it's sometimes it's the wrong alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Suri, why is your workout personally important to you?
So, you know, I get up very, very early in the morning to work out. And, my mother, my husband, they're always like, you're exhausting yourself. It's like not good for you. You shouldn't be doing this every single day. You should be taking more breaks. And I feel like it is what keeps me going. It is like what gets my day started right and gets me focused. And I've said this before, but I believe it with all my heart. When I push through that session, I have that feeling like I can do anything. I can deal with a difficult client. I could deal with my child who's being ridiculous. I could deal with my husband who's being stubborn. I could deal with my mother who's, pushing my buttons. I just feel like it gives me the like mental and physical energy to like take on the world. And it's such a great feeling. It's like I feel like I need that so much. And I feel like now with all the stress, it's like I need it more than ever.
Absolutely. I think, until people are part of a method that like is meant to be done at least 6 to 7 days a week, and that's like what we know and what we understand, like until that, it seems like, God, how can you work out every day? And it becomes more like, how can you not? How could I
Exactly.
do anything else if I didn't have this?
That's exactly right. I have to force myself sometimes if my body really needs the day off. I have to force myself to take the day off because mentally I need it so much that even if my body is so tired, and usually like 5 minutes into it, if I'm sore, if I'm tired, 5 minutes into it, I'm like smiling from ear to ear. Like I'm so happy.
Yeah, exactly. It is so much more about that than the physical. And the physical is great. Like results from Tracy are amazing, but it becomes about everything else.
Exactly.
So what is your routine with your workout now? Do you always do Attain even if you're at the studio or on streaming?
So it's been very challenging because I've been really focused on Attain. That's really been what my lane and what I really love that challenge. But because in the studio, I signed up for the 7 o'clock class because that's already late for me because I'm used to working out at 5:30. And then I really start my Zoom calls at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I've kind of been pushing my day. Um, the 7 o'clock is fundamentals. And so I was really like, that was one of the reasons I was like questioning whether it was a great thing to go back to the studio now. But I've committed to it and I'm trying to find the challenges in fundamentals. And there's also a half an hour of dance. So I'm so loving that. And, being back to dancing with Crystal and the other trainers has been so much fun. And I can't believe how much I've forgotten so many of the dances. And I'm still a beginner at the dances. It's still not my like comfort zone. But that has been great. So, I basically was doing whatever was the right time for me. So because I was working out at 6 in the studio, I was taking the days that it was fundamental, I take fundamental, the days it was Attain. So I was doing both.
Okay.
And now I'm sort of doing fundamentals because that's what I'm doing at the studio. So, I love it all. And I'm trying to get in as much as I can.
None of them are easy. So.
Right. But gone are the days where I was doing like 2 and 3 classes, and watermill on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm just like focused.
That's good. So one of our standard questions is, where do you live and what do you do? And we definitely want to talk about that. Beth also asked in the chat if you will talk a little bit about your work.
So I started a business about a little over 20 years ago. It's a lobbying and government relations business. My focus is New York City government. Um, I have about 35 people who work with me. We represent lots of not-for-profits, corporate clients, real estate, hospital systems, lots of folks in technology, education. We have about 250 clients. It's very challenging work, particularly now uh, during COVID, helping clients to focus on what they need to get done. Um, we've been right now really focused on city, state, and federal because a lot of the sort of decisions on reopening are coming down from the state. So, while we're not in Albany and we're not in Washington, so many of the decisions that are made there affect us. And we also have partners who we work with who are state lobbyists and federal lobbyists as well. So it's, right now we're all working remotely. And it's very challenging because nobody's in the government physically. And, lobbying is about going to the lobby and talking to people.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. So, we've been forced to be very creative. We've been doing like virtual rallies and virtual lobbying days and, panel discussions. And we've been hosting a lot of webinars and, with elected officials. And so, it's forced us. And I've said to my team that, all of us are getting to be better professionals because we're testing the boundaries. We're forced to be more creative and thinking about being more strategic, because we can't just sort of show up somewhere and have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, it must be just so incredibly different than how you were working before, and couldn't possibly be more of an important time.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Well, we appreciate all of your work, Suri. We knew before COVID that you did lots of important things that are impactful to our communities. So we appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
We do have another question in the chat from Heather. She said she cannot get into the dance cardio. How do you do it? And do you have any advice on getting started?
So, till this day, even in the beginners, I don't know all the dances. And Anne Claire, who taught me a lot of the dances along with Crystal in the Watermill studio, used to just say to me, just keep moving. If you don't know it, it's okay. Just keep like jumping and moving around and turning and, and you'll get it, and it's interesting that there's sort of like a body memory, where there are moments where I just go to the next step without thinking about it. And, I feel like for me, it's the joy of like moving and the music and the whole experience. And, I stood in the back and I still stand in the back for the dancing. And I still feel like I don't really know all of the dances. But I'm trying to really just appreciate the joy that it gives me to just move. And once in a while, I actually get a dance,
So how did you first discover the Tamily, especially the difference between when you met people in person and when you got on Instagram?
So it was very interesting. There's a woman named Shannon who was part of the Tamily. She's from Alabama. And she came to a class. She sat next to me. I think it was at Vitality. And she was doing the method. And she answered a questionnaire in a magazine. And she got a free Vitality weekend from like this questionnaire. Like, I guess she won or whatever it was. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I'm in North Carolina. I grew up in Alabama. I'm a nurse. I work crazy shifts. I do this streaming. And I was like, just so blown away by the whole thing. And that was the first I really heard of the streaming. And then I met a woman in Texas who I sort of lost touch with. She took my number and I was like, "You taking my number?" Like, she's like, "Yeah, this is a community." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," you know, and I kind of lost touch with her. I always think about it, wonder what happened to her. So it was like those little, you know, those pieces where I kind of, because I was really focused on the studio and that I sort of understood. And then when Natalia called me and said, "I'm coming to New York, could we get together?" And then I tell my husband, he's like, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going out with some people." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, they're from the Tamily." And he goes, "Well, do you know them?" And I'm like, No, I've met them online." He's like, "You're meeting up with people that you met online? What, are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "I don't know, maybe it is weird, but like, seems like it might be fun." And, you know, and he's like, but "You don't really know these people." And, you know, since then, of course, like Natalia and Emily and Natalie have been to my house in the Hamptons, and we've had dinners and we've gotten together and we follow each other. And, you know, it's like, it's really been incredible. When I've gone to London, you know, I met We Are Tam Nation and, you know, all the fun, fabulous women, Adita and all those amazing, Claire and all these amazing women. And every year that I went to London, we hooked up and we did a class together. And, you know, and now my husband kind of like, you know, I'll run into someone and he'll be like, "Oh, you know them from Tracy Anderson, right?" And like, you know, he sort of rolls his eyes. And, but, you know, he's met a lot of people and he's really enjoyed meeting people. And, you know, even when I travel, I'm like meeting up with people and, you know, he'll say like, "Oh, I'll come join you." And, you know, he's really appreciated the people that I've met. And, you know, he kind of gets that they're really special and interesting people. And, you know, you met him, Suzanne, when he came to the, you know, he's the guy who comes to the Vitalities for the dinners. And, you know, he doesn't even sit next to me. He loves talking to everybody. And, he's talked to Deb and Ashley and so many of the women that, you know, that he's gotten to know. And the folks from Pennsylvania, that great group. And, you know, he's enjoyed meeting so many of the people.
Well, Natalia has a question as well. She said, "Bruce is so supportive of your journey. Have you been able to convince him to join you for Tracy Anderson?"
Well, let's see. He came for my birthday. He wasn't going to come. And then like all my friends said they were coming. And that morning I said, "Well, are you coming?" And he was like, "What do you think? I'm a jerk. I'm not going to come. Like everybody's coming and I'm not going to come." So he's like, "Look, I'm just going to do the stretching and then I'll leave." And so he, you know, he comes, he does the stretching and he starts walking out. And Tracy goes, "Wait, you're not leaving, are you?" And he was like, "Oh my God, I can't leave." And he did it. And, you know, I always kid him. I have pictures of it. And, you know, I always kid around with him. And, you know, he said, "Well, you know, maybe I'll do it someday. I'll work up to it, you know," but he's never done it again. I don't know that he's ever doing it again. But I was so appreciative that like he did it with me. And I think like he appreciates what it means to me. He's an exerciser, but not a consistent one. So he's fits and starts.
But it's always really nice to hear just about, you know, how that support ends up coming through, and especially something like your daughter starting to be involved with it. And, you know, I think our families end up seeing like, this is really beneficial. So even if they don't do it, they like support the fact that we do because it helps everybody.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. I'm so proud of my daughter. I mean, I'm just so proud of her. You know, she's been so consistent and, you know, it's really very important. I'm trying to get her to listen to the Ask Tracy's at the end because I feel like they give you so much. I love those, you know, those little gems that she gives you at the end of class.
And honestly, I mean, I think if you asked, you know, anyone that does the method, like if you could have had it as a teenager or a 20-year-old woman, like things would be so different. Like
Oh, wow. I so agree.
would be so amazing.
I totally agree. I feel like, Tracy, where were you when I was growing up? Boy, did I need this.
Yeah, my 20s would have been very different with Tracy Anderson involved.
My life today would be very different.
Oh gosh, yes. Definitely. Do you have a motivational quote or kind of a mantra that you go to when you need motivation?
You know, it's like, just keep going, you know? It's like one day at a time and just keep going, you know? And I try to feel that way when I'm doing the method, and it's hard. And I just like, I just think, let me just focus on this specific move and not worry like, how many minutes do I have left, and you know, how many more of these. And I just like, I try not to count. I try not to, like, I just try to think like, let me just focus on doing each one of these, and trying to feel it and feel the flow, and not worry about how am I going to get through like the rest of the week of these series, if I don't like one, or the rest of the moves, or the rest of, because you know, one is hard and then the next one feels like, oh, this one I got, you know? So
yeah, I think it's like being literally present in that moment, like not thinking I still have the whole other side, there's still 40 minutes left. Yeah, that makes
which
sense.
Suzanne, for me, that's the hardest thing. I'm like a planner, I'm a strategist, I'm always thinking about the next thing, I'm always thinking about, okay, what do I have to do today to get ready for tomorrow? Living in that moment is the hardest thing for me, and that's why the focus on this method has been like so good for me mentally, because it's like, I'm not going to worry about tomorrow, how am I going to do this again tomorrow? I'm going to worry about just finishing this move right this second. And it's so challenging for me to do that.
Yeah, but that's such a good way to think and to focus. Like, and if you pay attention to what you're doing at that time, it won't probably feel as difficult.
Exactly. Also, not forcing your body to, like, sometimes I think to myself, this is hard, I'm just going to force myself. And as opposed to forcing yourself, if you kind of like, I always think to myself, I just got to be more gentle with myself. Like, not like force it, like get there, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's like how Tracy says, you know, you shouldn't be like holding part of yourself completely still, and like you should let your whole body do every movement.
Right. And that's so challenging for me.
Yeah, it is. I think that's a challenge for all of us. What is something important in your life that you would like to share with the Tamily?
I think just how much community means, and how much we all need community. I think a lot of us, you know, think that we're independent. We support other people. We don't really need support. We don't really need to ask for help. And I think, you know, every morning I wake up and I like look at the Instagram and I see people like, you know, pushing through in so many ways, whether it's work, whether it's the challenges of COVID, whether it's parenting, whether it's a loss, whether it's moving, whether it's, you know, whatever it is. And it's like, I just feel like community is just so important and so valuable, and support is, it's everything. It's what we all need all the time, and it's so hard to ask for it. And it's just an amazing thing to feel part of something. And, you know, I have a lot of communities that I'm part of, part of a political community, part of the Jewish community. But this community is very, very special and very, very meaningful.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think anybody can get it until they're part of it, but it is so much more than the workout. Like, the community is life-giving.
And you have been such an important part of it, and you give so much to other people, just even in this Ask Tamily, but everything that you do, is just incredible. And, thank you so much for what you do for this community.
Oh, sorry. You are like a legend. All I do is sit in this floor and talk to people for an hour a week.
Well, you bring together a lot of people and you get people talking about things that are really important and valuable to all of us. And that's not little, that's big. That's really important.
Thank you, Suri. We love it. And I mean, so much of the work happens behind the scenes. We have to give Nicole a lot of
I was
credit.
just going to say that. Yes.
Oh.
She's amazing.
And we have a question in the chat. I just want to make sure we answer because the live is starting with Tracy. So Nadia asked, will there be a recording? And yes, this whole interview will be on the Ask Tamily page, and then we'll also put it on YouTube in a few days so people can catch up if they have to go start the live.
Yes, and I've met her in London too. So.
Oh, cool. I think you might have met like the most Tamily across the whole world. So
I don't know. There's the woman from Malaysia. I think she's met more than I.
Yes. Miriam has met.
Has met more than I. And maybe Singrid has met more, but I've met a lot
too. Lots of meetups. Pre-COVID, of course.
Of course.
What is your philosophy about workout and exercise and nutrition?
I think it's evolved, and I think, there are different days that are different, and I try not to get too stuck on anything. I'm a pescatarian. I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat since I'm 12. But it's an evolution. Right now, I try to not eat until 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I try to enjoy whatever it is that I'm eating, having a light lunch and, a larger dinner. But, I was limiting myself very much at different times. And, I just try to eat healthy. I love vegetables, but I love champagne and I love wine. And my newest love is grapefruit juice, vodka, and lime, which my friend Claudia introduced me to. And there are days that I drink every night, and then there are times that I say I'm gonna take a break. And so I try not to get too stuck. I don't drink coffee. I drink matcha tea with oat milk. I try not to get too stuck on anything, but like try to listen to my body and eat when I'm hungry, and and eat things that make me feel good and not eat things that make me feel bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's simple but very important advice. We can all get really caught up in different, approaches and restrictions, but that makes perfect sense.
I think the most important thing is to enjoy the food, to eat. I love good food and I want to enjoy it. And I work out and I work hard, but I want to enjoy it. But if it doesn't make me feel good, I don't want to eat it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, Suri, we are actually at our last minute. Instagram will end this without us stopping it at exactly 60 minutes. So is there any last words you would like to say while you have this audience?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in today. And thank you all for everything you do to be part of this community. And, it's so important. I remember when Rebecca's sister joined Hannah. And one of the things that she said to her is start following people. And so, let's all welcome new people, and let's all try to help them and support them. And let's just try to be there for each other. This is such an incredibly challenging time. And I think just saying something nice to someone, like taking a minute to say, Suzanne, you look great, or it's great that, we have a fellow Tamily member who's going through chemo right now. And, taking a minute to just say, you are a warrior. You're going to get through this. We're so proud of you. you know, it's just so important. And, you know, it feeds us also, each of us, to give to somebody else.
Definitely. Suri, you're such a great example of that and just the epitome of Tamily. Thank you for interviewing today and for
Thank you
being.
so much.
Thank you, Suri. Thanks,
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.